Have you ever walked away from a conversation with the strange ache of being invisible? You spoke, yet your words seemed to vanish, like smoke dissolving in the air, leaving no trace in the minds of those around you. It stings, doesn't it? To feel that presence alone isn't enough, that no matter how much you explain, your voice carries little weight. Many try to fix this by speaking louder, by adding more words, as if volume could substitute for respect. But respect doesn't bend to force. It bows to something deeper. The Stoics saw this clearly. They taught that influence is not born in noise, but in stillness, clarity of mind, restraint of tongue, and a presence that needs no defense. Respect follows those who respect themselves first, those who do not waste a single word or scatter their energy in desperation. So the question is not how much you speak, but how you carry each word. How does silence serve you? How does presence shape your voice? Stay with me, and together we'll uncover what makes words unforgettable. As we step into the first chapter, imagine this. You arrive at a meeting 2 minutes late. The room is calm, nothing has collapsed, yet the first words out of your mouth are, "Sorry, I'm late." In that instant, you step into the role of the offender, as though your very presence requires pardon. One word, and your authority shrinks. Now picture another scene. A crowded hallway, the current of people rushing past. Someone bumps into you. Reflexively you say, "Sorry." Sorry for what? For existing in the same space as everyone else? It feels harmless, even polite, but beneath it lies a dangerous belief. You are a burden. Every unnecessary apology etches that story deeper into your mind. Epictetus once said, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself has the power to break my freedom of choice." The words you choose are part of that freedom. When you apologize without cause, you surrender it. You teach yourself that you are small, and the more you repeat it, the more others will believe it too. I remember this cycle in my own life. I was mid-sentence in a meeting when someone cut me off. Without thinking, I stepped aside and said, "Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry for being interrupted." The absurdity struck me. I wasn't at fault, yet I spoke as though I was. That moment became a turning point. I realized how many times I had weakened myself with needless words, and I made a choice. No more apologies where none were owed. This habit doesn't only live in conversations, it seeps into emails. "Sorry to bother you." It hides in messages. "Sorry, just checking in." It clings to questions. "Sorry, can I ask?" Each seems polite, but together they whisper the same lie: "You are an intrusion." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Our words are those thoughts made visible. When they drip with apology, our spirit absorbs that same shade. Here's the hidden danger. Over-apologizing creates expectation. People begin to assume you'll take blame, yield space, accept unfair weight. It starts with letting others speak over you. It grows into colleagues handing you extra work. Before long, your time and energy are consumed not by duty, but by habit. Not because they forced you, but because you trained them to. Imagine this. A co-worker drops a last-minute task on your desk. The reflex says, "Sorry, I'll try to fit this in." And with that, you declare your priorities less important. Change the script. "I won't be able to take this on right now. Let's find another solution." No apology, no excuse, just clarity. And that firmness teaches others the standard you live by. The same applies beyond work. How often have you agreed to plans you didn't want, just to avoid guilt? A friend invites you out and you reply, "Sorry, I can't make it." But why frame self-respect as offense? A stronger answer, "I won't be able to, but I hope you enjoy." direct, honest, free of shame. Real friends respect truth. Those who don't never respected you at all. At this stage, let's be precise. There are times when apology is strength. When your actions cause harm, to say, "I am sorry," is not weakness, it is courage. The Stoic discipline is not to erase apology, but to wield it sparingly, with intention. An apology should heal, not serve as a reflex. Try this. Spend one day without saying sorry unless true harm was done. Catch the urge and reframe it. Thanks for waiting. Do you have a moment? I'd like to add something. At first it feels unnatural. Soon it becomes liberating. You'll notice people listening more closely. You'll notice yourself standing taller. So let this settle. Respect begins with how you carry yourself. Every needless apology erodes presence. Every clear word rebuilds it. Stop apologizing for existing, and people will finally hear you. And as this lesson closes, another rises. Once you learn to guard your words, you must learn to guard your time with boundaries that hold firm against the pull of others. Moving into the second chapter, picture this. You're carrying too much on your shoulders, smiling on the outside, while your insides whisper exhaustion. Someone asks you for one more thing, a favor, a task, a sacrifice, and you nod. You nod even as your chest tightens, even as your time and energy collapse under the weight. Why? Because saying no feels like confrontation, because refusing feels like guilt. But here's the unvarnished truth. When you live without boundaries, you're not kind. You're complicit in your own erosion. And the world will not thank you for bleeding yourself dry. Now imagine this in sharper detail. It's late at night. You need rest, but your phone lights up. A message from work, or a friend who needs to unload. You know the cost. Sleep you'll never recover. Peace you won't get back. But you answer anyway. You think you're doing the noble thing, but you're trading away your strength for the comfort of someone else. That is not virtue. That is servitude. Epictetus once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not won in grand gestures. It is won in the quiet courage to say, "Enough. I lived this mistake too many times." I remember one weekend, my schedule was already overflowing. A friend asked me to help them move. Without pause, I said yes. My body said no, but my lips betrayed me. That weekend was misery, not because my friend asked, but because I betrayed myself. I spent those hours cursing the boxes I carried, when what I truly resented was my own weakness to refuse. That was the lesson. Every false yes is a theft from yourself. Every unguarded consent is a betrayal of your own dignity. Here's where the insight cuts deep. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you're saying no to something you need. No to rest. No to focus. No to your own priorities. And eventually, those no's pile up like bricks on your chest. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts keep declaring, "My needs don't matter," then your life will be dyed in that same color. Others will see it. They'll treat you as you've taught them to treat you. Someone who bends, someone who yields, someone who does not count. At this stage, the practice begins small. A friend invites you out, but you don't want to go. You feel the instinct to soften the refusal, to cushion it with excuses. Don't. Don't say, "I'd love to, but I'm too busy." Just say, "I'm staying in tonight." That's it. Clean. Strong. Final. Boundaries are like muscles, weak if unused, powerful when trained. At first, they tremble, but each time you say no when you mean no, that muscle grows. And each time it grows, so does your freedom. From here, notice the shift. Those who respect you will adapt. They'll honor the walls you build. And those who don't, they reveal what was always true. They never respected you at all. Boundaries are not walls that isolate. They are gates that filter. They protect what is sacred inside you, and they expose who should not be allowed to stay. That is why learning to say no is not cruelty. It is clarity. It separates the genuine from the opportunistic. This is where Stoicism guides us most clearly. Seneca warned that we waste more time than we realize, not because others steal it, but because we hand it away freely. Life is short, but it becomes shorter when every boundary is broken. If you let others dictate your limits, you will one day look back and see a life shaped by everyone's demands but your own. That is the quiet tragedy of the unbound soul. Advancing to the heart of it, to be respected, you must first respect yourself. To respect yourself, you must guard your time, your energy, your peace. Boundaries are not about rejection, they are about alignment. They align your outer actions with your inner values. And when those are aligned, people notice. They see a person who knows their worth. And worth commands respect. Now imagine again you've practiced. Someone asks something of you and you pause, not to apologize, not to scramble for excuses, just to measure the cost. If it violates your priorities, you say, "No, I won't be able to do that." Calm, firm, no guilt, no collapse. Watch what happens then. The world doesn't end. The friendship doesn't always break. In fact, you discover something radical. The people who truly care about you never needed your constant yes in the first place. They needed your honesty. At this stage, feel the liberation. Boundaries aren't chains, they're wings. They lift you out of the mire of resentment, out of the quiet anger of self-betrayal. They give you back your time, your focus, your dignity. And in reclaiming these, you show the world how you deserve to be treated, because people treat you the way you allow them to. And when you demand respect by respecting yourself, you stop being a doormat. You start being a door, one you decide when to open and when to close. This chapter ends with a sharp truth. If it's not a true yes, it's a no. Say it, live it, and feel the strength return. Respect yourself, and others will follow. And as this muscle grows stronger, we move into the next discipline, learning not just when to speak, but when to pause and let silence do the work for you. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the weight of a silence that makes you uncomfortable. You're standing in a room, words on your tongue, and the moment a gap opens, you rush to fill it. You talk faster, you pile sentences on top of each other, you explain more than anyone asked for. You feel safe because the air is filled with your voice, yet that safety is false. The more you pour, the thinner your words become. Respect evaporates with the noise. Seneca once said, "Silence is a lesson learned through suffering." He was right. Most people suffer in silence, but fewer still have learned from it. Now imagine the boardroom. You have an idea worth listening to, but your eagerness betrays you. You fire through the points without a breath, hoping speed will equal strength. When you finish, you see the blank stares. The message is lost. Now picture the same moment differently. You speak slowly, you plant one idea, and you pause. The room leans in. The silence pulls them closer. In that pause, your words grow roots. That is the secret few dare to use. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is weight. Here's where we confuse ourselves. We think quick responses prove intelligence. We think fast talking means sharp thinking, but the truth is harsher. Words without pause blur into background noise. The human mind is not built to absorb an endless stream. It needs space, space to catch the meaning, to reflect, to respond. Pausing gives that gift. Without it, you bury your own power. I learned this the hard way. Early in my career, I believed intelligence meant speed. I answered questions before they were fully asked. I stuffed every gap with explanation. My words were a flood, but floods destroy more than they nourish. One day, after a messy presentation, my manager looked me in the eye and said, "You have great ideas, but you don't give people time to absorb them." That sentence pierced me. I carried it for weeks. It forced me to confront the truth. My fear of silence was strangling my influence. From here, the change was painful but necessary. I forced myself to pause. After every key point, I let the silence sit. At first, it felt unnatural, as if I had forgotten what to say. My heart pounded in those gaps. But then something remarkable happened. People leaned in. They weren't distracted. They were engaged. After one meeting, someone told me, "That was impactful. Every word felt like it mattered." It struck me my power wasn't in adding more words. It was in daring to withhold them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think before you speak, but when the moment comes to act, do not hesitate." A pause is not hesitation. It is precision. It declares, "I trust my words to stand alone." It shows control, not fear. When you pause, you aren't shrinking, you are anchoring. This truth extends beyond speeches. In arguments, the instinct is to react quickly, to defend yourself in the heat of raised voices. But what if you don't? What if you pause? That silence unsettles. It forces the other person to hear their own words. The balance shifts. You move from being reactive to being deliberate. In that pause, you claim authority. The loud may seem strong, but the composed are the ones remembered. Even in everyday conversation, the pause transforms perception. Someone asks you a question. Don't rush. Breathe. Think. Then answer. That brief silence carries a message. I weigh my words. I speak with intention. It makes you appear thoughtful, steady, and trustworthy. Respect follows the rhythm of restraint. At this stage, practice is essential. Try this. The next time you speak, whether to a friend or in a meeting, pause after your main point. Let the silence work for you. Resist the urge to fill it. It will feel strange at first, even threatening, but repetition turns strangeness into strength. Soon, you'll notice the shift. People lean closer. They listen harder. Your words linger longer in their minds. This is where control lives. To master the pause is to master yourself. It is proof that you are not desperate for attention, not afraid of stillness, not enslaved by the need to be constant sound. Your words have value, and value is felt in the spaces between. The pause is not absence, it is presence, magnified. So let me leave this with you. Respect is rarely granted to those who scramble to fill the void. It is given to those who can stand in silence, unshaken. When you learn to pause, you learn to command. And as you anchor this discipline, we move toward the next, using humor with wisdom, so your words bring light without ever diminishing your weight. Entering the fourth chapter, picture the sound of laughter echoing through a room. It feels good at first, warm, effortless, almost like music. But stay too long in that rhythm and you notice something shift. The laughter that once lifted you begins to reduce you. Every time you open your mouth, people expect a punchline, not a point. You've become the entertainment, not the voice worth following. Seneca once wrote, "Laughter should not be abundant, nor should it be absent. There is a time for everything." He knew the truth. Humor is power, but power mishandled makes you the clown instead of the leader. Now imagine a meeting, a serious conversation, decisions on the table. Someone cracks jokes again and again. At first the room chuckles, but soon the laughter fades. No one leans in to listen anymore. Their words have lost gravity. Respect is not given to the person who makes everyone laugh without end, but to the one who knows when to sharpen the air with seriousness and when to soften it with wit. The Stoics never condemned joy or laughter. They condemned excess. Balance was always the law. Here's where my own failure enters. Early in my career, I was terrified of silence, terrified of not being liked. So I made humor my armor. If I felt nervous, I cracked a joke. If I felt out of place, I joked again. And while people laughed, something inside me noticed they weren't taking me seriously. The turning point came during a team meeting. In a moment of insecurity, I joked, "I'm just here to make spreadsheets look pretty." The room laughed, but afterward, my manager pulled me aside. He said, "You're better than that. Don't make yourself the punchline." Those words landed like stone. I saw clearly I was using humor to hide weakness, and in doing so, I made myself small. Moving deeper, the question is not whether to use humor, but why. Ask yourself, what purpose does this joke serve? Is it to diffuse tension, to anchor a point, to bring people together? Or is it simply to escape your own discomfort? If it's the latter, the cost is high. Respect slips through your fingers. The laugh feels good for a moment, but it leaves nothing behind. Stoicism teaches us to live with intention. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your words be few and well considered." The same applies here. Let your laughter be chosen, not compulsive. Think of the danger in self-deprecating humor. A touch of humility can make you relatable, but repeated self-mockery chips away at your foundation. Tell the world often enough that you are lost or incompetent, and they will believe you. Instead of saying, "I have no idea what I'm doing," say, "This is a learning experience, and I'm figuring it out." One shrinks you. The other shows adaptability and strength. Words shape perception. Perception shapes respect. At this stage, pay attention to timing. Great humor, like great silence, works because it is measured. A well-timed quip can cut tension in half, can make a heavy truth easier to carry, but constant joking dulls its edge. The best speakers in history understood this. They didn't drown their message in laughter. They used humor like seasoning, sparingly, purposefully to enhance, never to overwhelm. From here, a warning. Never use humor as a shield against discomfort. Don't hide your unease behind a joke. Sometimes the most powerful act is to say nothing funny at all, to let the moment be what it is. Courage is found in speaking directly, without disguise. Humor is not a substitute for honesty. It is a companion to it. Advancing to the heart of the matter, humor is a tool, not a crutch. It can elevate your words, but it cannot replace substance. When used wisely, it leaves people saying, "This person is both human and strong." When abused, it leaves them thinking, "This person cannot be taken seriously." The difference is everything. Respect grows where balance lives. So remember this. Laughter has its time. Let it in, but do not live by it. Use it to serve your message, not to escape it. When you master this balance, you will be respected not just for what you can make people feel in the moment, but for what you leave behind when the laughter fades. And as we close this chapter, the path sharpens again. Humor may build connection, but gossip destroys it. The next step is learning why the words you speak about others decide whether you are trusted or forgotten. Entering the 5th chapter, Picture the hushed corner of an office or a cafe where voices drop and eyes dart, where a story whispered feels like a secret treasure. Gossip often comes dressed like intimacy. It promises belonging, a quick bond over the flaws of someone who isn't there. For a moment, it feels powerful, but the power is poison. The instant people realize you trade in whispers, their trust in you begins to rot. Because if you'll gossip about one, what stops you from gossiping about all? Respect vanishes in that shadow. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." To walk away from gossip is sometimes to look dull or detached or uninterested. So be it. Better to look foolish for silence than to be revealed as untrustworthy through words. Now imagine the faces of the people you respect most. Do you see them whispering in corners, tearing others down to feel taller? Or do you see them standing apart, their words heavy with integrity, their presence enough without the currency of secrets? Respect does not cling to the one who always knows the rumors. Respect gathers around the one whose lips are disciplined, who speaks as though every word could be carved in stone. I learned this truth the hard way. Years ago, I slipped into gossip at work. It wasn't cruel, just small observations about co-workers' habits, little stories traded like candy. I thought it was harmless. Then, one afternoon, I walked past a doorway and heard my own name being whispered. My stomach dropped. The laughter felt different when I was the subject. In that moment, I realized I was no different from them. I had fed the very cycle that now consumed me. That day, I made a decision, no more. I would not participate. I would not trade my integrity for the fleeting rush of being in the know. From here, notice what happens when you refuse to engage. People pay attention. They see that you do not need to drag others down to lift yourself up. They begin to trust you in ways gossip never could. Trust is rare currency. It is worth more than the cheap intimacy of shared scandal. The Stoics remind us our energy is finite, our time is short. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." So stop whispering about who failed or who faltered. Live in such a way that your own actions can be spoken of without shame. At this stage, the challenge is subtle. Gossip doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides as concern. Did you hear what she's going through? Sometimes as curiosity. I wonder if he'll last in that job. Sometimes as venting. But the key test is simple. Is the person you're speaking about present? And does the conversation serve a real purpose? If the answer is no, it's gossip. And gossip, dressed in any costume, is still poison. So what can you do in the moment? Redirect. If someone leans in with the bait, you don't need to strike them down. Simply shift the air. Say, "That's their business. I hope they're okay," or "I'd rather not talk about that. How's your work going?" These small pivots are powerful. They signal without aggression that you will not play. They teach others that your company is safe, your words clean, and in time that earns a respect gossipers can never buy. Here's where the deeper philosophy cuts. Gossip feels like a shortcut to connection, but it is actually the fastest road to isolation. People may laugh with you, but they will not trust you. And without trust, your voice loses its weight. Integrity is slow, sometimes lonely, but it builds a foundation unshaken by rumor. Gossip is quick, intoxicating, but it robs you of the very thing you crave, respect. From here, reflect on what you want your presence to mean. Do you want people to lower their voices when you arrive, afraid you'll carry their words elsewhere? Or do you want them to breathe easier, knowing you'll never weaponize their absence? The choice is daily and it is costly, but nothing worth keeping is cheap. At this stage, let the message settle. Gossip may make you feel important for a minute, but it destroys the respect that could have lasted a lifetime. If you want people to respect you, choose integrity over amusement. Keep your tongue clean. Let your words build, not corrode. Respect follows those who refuse to stain their speech with shadows. This is where I'll ask you, drop a simple word in the comments. Integrity. Let it be your marker, your decision to rise above whispers. And if these words resonate with you, subscribe so we can keep walking this Stoic path together, building voices that command respect, not laughter in the dark. And as we close this chapter, we move into the final lesson, the discipline not just to know what to say, but to know when to stop speaking, because sometimes the greatest respect is won not by words at all, but by the silence that seals them. Advancing to the 6th chapter, picture the sound of a voice that never ends. Words tumble on until what might have been sharp becomes dull. What might have struck home is now forgotten. We've all seen it. The speaker who repeats themselves long after the point is made. The one who dominates every corner of the room, filling silence as though silence itself were a threat. And yet, the more they talk, the less anyone listens. Epictetus once wrote, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in unimportant matters. True wisdom is not in adding more, it is in knowing when to stop." Now imagine the meeting room. You've explained your idea clearly. In the first 30 seconds, you had them. Their eyes were on you, their minds following. But you keep going, piling details on top of details, filling every pause with extra words. Slowly, you feel it slipping. The energy in the room drains. People lean back. Minds wander. Respect thins. I lived this mistake myself. After one long-winded explanation, my boss pulled me aside and said, "You had them in the first 30 seconds, but then you lost them." That sentence struck me harder than any silence ever could. Here's where the truth cuts deep. Talking too much is rarely about knowledge. It is about fear. Fear that if we stop, we'll be misunderstood. Fear that silence will make us look weak. Fear that our words alone aren't enough. But true confidence is not in endless speech. It is in precision. The most respected voices do not flood. They strike. They trust silence to carry the weight. Silence becomes their ally, not their enemy. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others unless it brings some benefit." The same rule applies to speech. Do not waste words that do not serve. Every sentence should bring weight or bring nothing at all. When your words scatter, your influence scatters with them. At this stage, awareness is your first weapon. Watch yourself. Do you repeat the same thought 3 times? Do you circle back, layering justification over what was already clear? Do you feel the urge to fill every pause? Notice it. Catch yourself. The first step is to see the pattern. Without awareness, you cannot cut away the excess. From here, practice the pause. Make your point. Then stop. Let the words hang in the air. Let people process, reflect, and draw their own meaning. At first, the silence will feel heavy, even unbearable. You will want to fill it, but resist. In that silence, your words harden into something remembered. I began trying this after my wake-up call. At first, the pauses felt like stumbles, but then I noticed heads nodding, people leaning forward, someone saying afterward, "That was clear." That stayed with me. It was not my added words that struck them. It was the space I allowed. Think of high-stakes moments, negotiations, arguments, interviews. You state your point, your request, your number. And then silence. The instinct is to rush, to justify, to explain, but the greatest strength is restraint. You stop, you let them sit with it. The silence shifts the power. It makes your words undeniable, harder to dismiss. In arguments, it diffuses fire. In negotiations, it anchors your position. In life, it commands respect. At this stage, learn the art of trimming. Before you speak, ask, what is the shortest, clearest way to say this? Precision is not coldness, it is discipline. The Stoics practiced restraint not just in action, but in speech. Each word was a tool, not a decoration. Each phrase was meant to serve. When you speak with this intention, people lean closer. They know you don't waste breath. They know your words carry weight. From here, imagine the difference. The rambler fills rooms with noise, but leaves nothing behind. The measured voice speaks less, but the words remain after the air clears. Which do you want to be remembered as? The one who was heard, or the one who was endured? At this stage, the lesson sharpens. Respect is not born from saying more. It is born from saying enough and then stopping. It is born from trusting that your words, chosen with care, do not need scaffolding. They can stand on their own. Silence is not a gap to fear. It is a space where respect takes root. So let this settle. Wisdom is not in the endless flood, but in the precise strike. Confidence is not in talking without pause, but in knowing exactly when to end. Respect grows in that discipline. And as we close this chapter, we return to the larger circle, 6 principles that together form the architecture of presence. Each one a stone, and this final one the keystone. Know when to stop, and your words will live longer than your voice. You now carry a steadier voice. You've learned to cut away needless apologies, to draw lines that hold, to pause with intent, to let humor serve instead of weaken, to rise above gossip, and to stop before words lose their weight. These disciplines shape the way you stand in any room. Yet mastery invites a new question. Once you hold yourself with strength, how do you direct that strength outward? How do you move from simply guarding your dignity to guiding the tone of the space around you? It is here the journey deepens. What was once defense becomes influence. The habits you forged are no longer just armor. They are instruments. They allow you not only to protect respect, but to project it, to shape how others see, hear, and follow you. As we step into the next chapter, picture a man who walks into a room without apology, without shrinking, without the constant reflex of making himself smaller. His presence feels different, doesn't it? He does not beg for space. He takes it, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority. This is the first fruit of discipline, the moment when shedding needless apologies transforms into a new kind of framing. You no longer enter conversations as the guilty guest. You enter as the host of your own voice. Now imagine the shift in yourself. Before, you might have opened every sentence with hesitation, softening, trying not to offend. But once you let go of that habit, you discover something subtle. You can shape how a room perceives you before you even finish your first thought. Authority framing begins the instant you choose clarity over guilt. Instead of lowering yourself with sorry to bother you, you rise with here's what matters. The tone changes, and with it, the weight people give your words. Epictetus reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. This is not simply about removing weakness. It is about stepping into alignment with yourself. When you stop apologizing for existing, you no longer act like an intruder. You act like a person who belongs. That alignment radiates outward, and people mirror it back. They see in you what you have finally chosen to see in yourself. Here's where a story makes it plain. A colleague of mine used to walk into meetings late, always with the same line. "Sorry, traffic was bad." The words were small, but the effect was large. His voice sounded apologetic even before he started presenting. Over time, people unconsciously treated him as secondary, someone who entered already at a disadvantage. Contrast this with another colleague who entered the same kind of meeting 2 minutes behind schedule and said, "Thanks for waiting. Let's begin." No guilt, no shrinking, just steady framing. People leaned in, not away. The difference wasn't in their competence, it was in the authority of how they claimed their space. At this stage, see the deeper pattern. The world does not decide your role in the room. You do. If you frame yourself as someone always seeking pardon, then pardon is all you'll be given. But if you frame yourself as someone who sets the direction, then direction is what others expect from you. This is not about pretending to be more than you are. It is about not pretending to be less. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought. If your words constantly paint you as an interruption, your mind will wear that color until it becomes your skin. But if your words consistently declare focus, here is the goal, here is the path, your mind sharpens into leadership. The respect you once chased begins to arrive uninvited. From here, consider a simple practice. The next time you speak in a group, begin not with hesitation, but with framing. Say, "Here's what I propose," or "This is the outcome we need." Notice how the tone in the room shifts. People are wired to follow confidence, not noise. Authority framing doesn't require volume. It requires presence. Think also of high-pressure situations. In negotiations, for example, the insecure voice says, "I'm sorry, but I think maybe we could try." The stronger voice says, "Here's my recommendation." The difference is not in aggression, but in control. The first abdicates authority before the real conversation has even begun. The second commands attention without force. This is what the Stoics meant by restraint. It is power without display, control without chaos. At this stage, let the lesson settle. The discipline of cutting away needless apologies was never just about silence. It was about creating room for something new, and that something is authority. Authority that begins in the way you frame your words, in the posture of how you claim space. Others cannot respect you if you refuse to respect the stage you stand on. So let this truth harden into memory. Respect is not demanded by force. It is drawn by presence. Presence is shaped by framing, and framing is born the moment you step into a room and carry yourself as though you belong there, because you do. And from this ground of authority, another strength rises. The power to turn personal boundaries into shared agreements, rules that others can no longer ignore. Moving into the next chapter, imagine a line drawn in the sand. On one side is your time, your energy, your peace. On the other side are the demands, expectations, and urgencies of others. If you do not guard the line, it will vanish beneath their footsteps. Boundaries that were once personal now must become shared agreements, rules that others recognize, not just preferences you whisper to yourself. Picture the difference. You tell a colleague, "I can't take on this extra project right now." That is a personal limit. But when you add, "Our agreement was clear on scope and timeline," let's hold to that. The limit becomes an agreement. It shifts from private preference to public rule. People take rules more seriously than requests. When you elevate your boundaries into agreements, you transform them into something enforceable. Here's where Stoic wisdom steps in. Epictetus taught that no man is free unless he is master of himself. But mastery is not only internal, it shapes the contracts of how you engage with others. When you are careless with your commitments, you signal that your time is negotiable. When you are precise, you teach others that your word is structure, not suggestion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Likewise, waste no more time arguing what fair treatment should look like. Define it, agree to it, and live by it. Let me tell you a story. A manager I knew constantly accepted last-minute tasks from his boss. Each time he groaned privately, yet each time he said yes. Soon, this became the expectation. Everyone piled onto him because he never formalized a boundary. Contrast that with another leader in the same company. When a new request arrived outside of scope, he calmly said, "That's not in the agreed plan. If we want to add it, let's remove something else." No anger, no drama, just a clear invocation of the agreement. Over time, people stopped overloading him. They respected his clarity because he respected his own limits enough to turn them into contracts. From here, the lesson sharpens. Agreements are not cages. They are guardrails. They keep you and others aligned, preventing chaos. Without them, everything dissolves into favors, pressures, and misunderstandings. With them, expectations are clean. The Stoics lived by this order. They saw that clarity reduces suffering. Much of our stress comes not from reality, but from broken expectations. Create agreements, and you cut the suffering at its root. At this stage, consider your personal life as well. Think of the friend who calls only when they need something. If you never set terms, their demands will expand until your patience is drained. But if you say, "I value our friendship, but I can't always be available at a moment's notice. Let's plan ahead," you transform resentment into clarity. Not everyone will like it, some will resist. But those who stay will adjust to the structure, and those who leave were never there for respect. They were there for convenience. Here's where courage matters. Many people fear turning boundaries into agreements because it feels confrontational. But confrontation is not the goal. Clarity is. Seneca once wrote, "A life without design is erratic." If your life has no agreements, no design, it will be erratic too, shaped by others instead of by you. Agreements are design. They are the blueprint of how you allow others to enter your space. Think of negotiations. Imagine you're discussing salary. You can frame it as a wish, "I was hoping for something higher." Or you can frame it as an agreement, based on our discussion and market standards. Here's the figure that reflects the value we agreed upon. The second carries weight. It invites respect. It removes the option of brushing you aside. Agreements anchor your voice. From here, reflect on the ripple effect. When you live by agreements, people begin to mirror you. They become more precise with their words around you. They start to value your time because you have modeled how to value it. You elevate the standard of interaction, not just for yourself, but for the circle you inhabit. Integrity spreads, and respect compounds. At this stage, remember the line in the sand. Do not let it vanish. Define it. Speak it. And when necessary, inscribe it into agreements so it cannot be ignored. The world respects clarity because clarity leaves no room for manipulation. Boundaries whispered can be dismissed. Agreements declared must be honored. And so the lesson closes with this. If you want others to respect your time, your energy, your presence, make it formal. Do not just guard the line. Name it, frame it, and hold it. In doing so, you elevate not only your own life, but the very culture around you. From here, the path turns again to the deeper art of silence, where even time itself can be shaped by the pauses you dare to hold. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine the weight of a silence stretched across a table. Two people sit across from each other. One speaks, then falls quiet. The other shifts, uncomfortable, filling the space with concessions they hadn't planned to give. Silence, when owned, bends time itself. It slows the frantic pace of the world and makes others reveal more than they intended. This is the subtle weapon of presence, the ability to use pauses not only for emphasis, but for leverage. Now picture yourself in negotiation. You state your position with clarity. The instinct rises to justify it, to keep talking, to defend. But instead, you hold the silence. Seconds stretch. The other side squirms. They fill the void. They explain, reveal, sometimes even concede. You said less, but you gained more. This is not trickery, it is discipline. Seneca reminded us that silence is a lesson learned through suffering. He meant that silence tests our patience, exposes our insecurity, and yet, once mastered, it becomes one of the most potent forms of control. Here's where the Stoic principle cuts deep. Time is perception. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Time is like a river made up of the events which happen. The one who controls the rhythm of speech controls the current of that river. When you pause deliberately, you redirect the flow. You give weight to your words and make others measure theirs against the silence you've left." I remember a colleague who rushed through every pitch, eager to impress. His words piled up like stones in a stream, but none of them shaped the current. He left no space for absorption. He seemed desperate, not strong. Then I watched another leader. He spoke a single sentence, then paused. Eyes in the room lifted, ears sharpened. People leaned forward, waiting. His silence commanded more than the other's speech. Afterward, someone whispered, "Every word he said mattered." What they really meant was this: every pause carried power. At this stage, begin to see silence as more than emptiness. It is a mirror. In conversation, when you hold back, people project themselves into that space. They reveal more than they planned. They negotiate with themselves. They second-guess their own strength. And all the while, you sit steady, anchored, not because you said more, but because you withheld. This is where composure becomes influence. Consider arguments. When voices rise, our reflex is to match the fire, to strike back instantly. But what happens if you don't? If you pause instead? The silence unsettles. The other person hears the sharpness of their own words echo back at them. The power shifts. You no longer look defensive. You look deliberate. Silence breaks the cycle of escalation, turning heat into weight and weight into respect. From here, take the lesson into daily life. When asked a question, resist the urge to answer instantly. Wait. Think. Then speak. The moment of pause changes everything. It shows you are thoughtful, not reactive. It signals that your words are chosen, not spilled. Over time, people will notice. They'll say, "You always seem calm. You always sound deliberate." What they're really observing is your command of time, the seconds you refuse to surrender to haste. This practice is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel exposed, as though silence betrays ignorance. But the truth is the opposite. Silence reveals composure. The Stoics prized self-command above all else, and silence is its clearest proof. To pause is to say, I am not a slave to urgency. I choose the moment. That choice makes your voice more than sound. It makes it signal. At this stage, reflect on how often words are wasted. We live in a culture that mistakes speed for brilliance, but brilliance is not speed, it is precision. Pausing allows your words to pierce instead of scatter. A fast tongue may impress for a moment, but a measured voice is remembered. So here is the sharp truth. Silence is not weakness, it is presence magnified. Use it to create rhythm, to give weight, to hold the space until others bend toward you. Speak, then stop. Let the air carry your message further than your voice could. And as this chapter closes, the lesson turns again. Once you've learned to hold silence as leverage, the question becomes, how do you balance that gravity with warmth? How do you keep respect without losing connection? That is where the art of adjusting presence between strength and approachability takes its place. Moving into the next chapter, imagine standing at the center of a crowded room. All eyes glance your way, but what they feel depends on the balance you strike. Too stern, and they see a wall. Too playful, and they see a jester. The strongest presence is not one extreme, but a rhythm between warmth and competence, a dial you can adjust with intention. Respect grows not from cold authority or endless charm, but from knowing when to soften and when to sharpen. Now picture a leader who always tries to be everyone's friend. They joke constantly, they smooth every edge. At first, people laugh and lean in, but slowly, no one takes them seriously. Their words land light, like feathers that float, but never anchor. On the other hand, think of the leader who is only stone, serious, distant, untouchable. Their presence commands silence, but not connection. People obey, but they do not trust. Both extremes fail. The one who wins respect is the one who adjusts, like a craftsman tuning an instrument, sometimes warm, sometimes firm, always in balance. The Stoics knew this well. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Improvement comes from those who balance honesty with humanity. If you are all severity, you repel growth. If you are all laughter, you invite mockery. But if you can shift, if you can tilt between warmth and competence depending on the moment, people find in you a presence both approachable and unshakable. That balance is rare, and rare things command respect. Here's where the image sharpens. Think of fire and water. Fire alone scorches, water alone floods. But when tempered together, they forge steel. Warmth without strength is comfort without structure. Strength without warmth is authority without loyalty. But together, they create influence that lasts. The Stoics never sought to be loved or feared. They sought to be respected, and respect comes from balance. I recall a manager who made this mistake in my own life. He cracked jokes constantly, thinking humor would make him likable. It did, for a season. But when deadlines came, no one leaned on him. They saw him as light-hearted, but not dependable. Later, I worked under someone else. Quiet, steady, kind when it was time, firm when it was needed. She could laugh with us in the morning and set hard expectations by afternoon. And because she held both, her words carried weight. She wasn't just liked, she was trusted. And trust is the bedrock of respect. At this stage, ask yourself, which way do you lean? Are you too eager to be liked, scattering humor to win approval? Or are you too rigid, hiding behind seriousness like armor? Both are masks. Both are fear. The fearless voice is the one that adjusts naturally, to smile when connection matters, to grow firm when truth is on the line. The balance is not performance, it is mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That line is the essence of the dial. Show others warmth, patience, understanding, humanity, but hold yourself to competence, clarity, standards, strength. Do that, and people will feel both safe and led. They will not just hear your words, they will follow your presence. From here, reflect on the daily practice. The next time you walk into a meeting, notice the atmosphere. If the air is tense, a touch of warmth, humor, openness can unlock it. If the air is too loose, bring gravity, precision, firmness. Each moment requires a different weight. When you learn to shift, you stop being one-dimensional. You become dynamic, and dynamic presences are unforgettable. At this stage, let the truth sink in. Respect is not built on a single note. It is built on harmony. Too much warmth, you drown in laughter. Too much competence, you harden into distance. But in balance, you become the kind of voice people remember, the kind of leader people seek, the kind of presence others quietly admire. And as this chapter closes, the circle widens again. Balance within yourself is vital, but the true test lies beyond. What reputation you build when you are absent, when others speak your name in rooms you have not entered. Here's where the lesson turns towards something that lingers when you are no longer in the room: your reputation. Imagine walking away from a meeting, and even in your absence, your name continues to move among the group. Not in whispers of gossip, not in doubt, but in recognition. That person delivers. Reputation is the echo of your actions. It is the flywheel of trust that spins even when you are not pushing it. Now imagine the opposite. Someone who talks loudly about their value, who insists on being respected, but when they leave, the tone shifts. Eyes roll. Confidence fades. Their words might have filled the air, but their absence leaves no weight. The Stoics warned us against chasing appearances, because appearances crumble when the actor exits the stage. What remains is substance, or the lack of it. Seneca wrote, "The greatest wealth is a poverty of desires. The man who needs to be constantly praised will never be trusted, because his hunger betrays him." At this stage, think of your own life. Have you ever noticed how true respect is earned not in declarations, but in consistency? A person who shows up on time, who does what they said they would, who credits others openly but takes responsibility quietly. That person's name spreads without their effort. They don't need to say, "Trust me." Trust travels ahead of them. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." When you live this way, others become the ones who speak your character into rooms you've never entered. I once worked alongside two colleagues who taught me this contrast vividly. One would always find a way to talk about his contributions, weaving his importance into every conversation. The other said little about herself, but consistently delivered, consistently supported, consistently honored her word. Months later, when promotions were discussed, the room carried her name, not his. She wasn't there. She didn't have to be. Her reputation did the speaking. Here's where the flywheel image matters. Reputation doesn't build overnight. It compounds. Every small act of integrity adds weight. Every broken promise subtracts it. Over time, the wheel spins faster, carrying your name further, until opportunities begin arriving without your pursuit. This is the quiet advantage of the disciplined life. It makes others your advocates without you asking. But let's be honest, building this kind of reputation is slow. Gossip and flash are quick. They make you visible for a moment, but just as quickly, they burn out. The Stoics sought the long arc. They trusted that character, tested over time, outlasts every shortcut. In a noisy world, the one who doesn't need to shout is the one remembered. At this stage, consider the discipline required. When someone else is praised, do you rush to mention your own role? Or do you let silence speak for you, trusting that your work will bear witness over time? When mistakes happen, do you shift blame to protect your image? Or do you carry responsibility, knowing that trust grows strongest in storms? The reputation worth having is built in these moments, the ones where no spotlight shines, where only your conscience watches. From here, remember, people talk when you are not present. The question is what story they're telling. If you've lived with integrity, the story carries you higher than your own words ever could. If you've cut corners, the story undercuts you faster than any enemy might. You cannot control every voice, but you can control the pattern of your actions, and those patterns write the script others repeat. So let this truth cut clear. Reputation is not what you announce, it is what echoes. It is the accumulation of choices, habits, and moments of restraint. It is the shadow cast by your presence when you are gone. Build it with patience, guard it with consistency, and let it speak so loudly in your absence that you never need to defend yourself in person. And as this chapter comes to its close, the path points to one last discipline, the ability to seal your influence not just with words spoken in the moment, but with clarity that endures after the conversation ends. From here, imagine the end of a conversation where your words don't just vanish into the air, they linger, they carry on in the minds of those who heard them. This is the final act of influence, the ability to close with clarity so that what you've said continues working even in your absence. Too many speak well, but leave no anchor. The Stoic voice knows how to seal meaning in the silence that follows. Now picture a negotiation. You've stated your position, offered your reasoning, and the instinct rises to keep talking, to justify, to soften. But instead, you stop. You let the silence hold the weight. The other person shifts, recalculates, bends. In that pause, the close happens. Not because you pressed harder, but because you trusted your words to stand. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." The same is true of speech. To say everything is to say nothing. Precision seals. Clarity endures. Here's where the practice becomes practical. 3 moves matter: recap, commitment, echo. Recap means ending a conversation with the essence in one sentence, so we've agreed on this direction. That sentence prevents drift. Commitment means assigning who does what, not in vague hopes, but in exact terms. You'll handle this, I'll deliver that. The final move is echo, sending a brief written note afterward, 3 lines at most, to ensure memory doesn't distort meaning. These are not tricks. They are habits of respect. Respect for time, respect for clarity, respect for yourself. I once watched a leader who gave inspiring speeches but never closed. He left every meeting on a swell of emotion. People clapped, but afterward, no one knew what to do. The energy bled away. Another leader in the same room would listen quietly, then summarize in 10 words. He assigned tasks, confirmed deadlines, and sent a short message afterward. His words didn't sound as grand, but they lasted. Weeks later, his direction was the one still alive. Influence is not in how much applause you earn in the moment. Influence is in how much action survives the moment. At this stage, ask yourself, how many of your conversations dissolve into fog because you failed to close? How often do you assume people understood, when in truth, They walked away with their own versions of the story. Marcus Aurelius urged, "Let your one delight be to do and to be just." Justice in speech means fairness of clarity. Do not leave people guessing. Do not leave yourself vulnerable to misinterpretation. Seal the message before the moment ends. The discipline is simple but demanding. Train yourself to stop where most ramble. Train yourself to summarize where most scatter. Train yourself to confirm where most assume. These habits may feel rigid at first, but over time they sharpen into strength. People will come to expect that when you speak, matters are not left hanging. They are tied down, carried forward, made real. That reliability becomes part of your reputation, and reputation, once formed, speaks longer than any argument you could make. So let this truth close within you. Words are not finished when they are spoken. They are finished when they are sealed. Respect is not won by what you pour out endlessly, but by what you can contain, refine, and deliver with finality. Speak, pause, seal, and when the room empties and your voice is gone, your message will remain alive and working in the silence you left behind. Respect is not something you demand. It is something you build every day in the way you stand, the way you speak, and the way you treat yourself and others. It does not belong to the loudest voice or the cleverest speech. It belongs to the person whose presence is steady, whose words are measured, and whose intentions are clear. When you let go of unnecessary apologies, you begin to project quiet confidence. When you set firm boundaries, you show others how you expect to be treated. When you master the pause, your words carry a weight that lingers. When you use humor wisely, you reveal warmth without losing credibility. When you refuse gossip, you prove your integrity. And when you know when to stop talking, your voice becomes more powerful than endless noise. Take these lessons to heart, and you will notice a shift. People will lean in when you speak. They will take your words seriously. More importantly, you will begin to see yourself in a new light. You will recognize that respect begins within, and once it grows there, the world cannot help but reflect it back. I want to hear from you. Which principle resonates with you most today? Share it in the comments with the words, "Speak strong." If you felt this message reach you, consider subscribing so you can keep walking this path of strength and clarity with us. Carry yourself with intention, speak with presence, and remember this truth as you step forward. The moment you choose not to shrink, you already begin to rise. Greater lessons are on the way, so stay ready for what comes next.